You don't need motivation to stay disciplined. What you need is a system. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait for inspiration to write, he wrote every single day. The Stoics didn't ask, "Do I feel like doing this today?" They asked, "Is this the right thing to do?" The difference is everything. So ask yourself, are you living by feelings or by principles? If you're rebuilding your discipline, start by rebuilding your system. Not your intensity. Not your mood. Your structure. Comment Stoic if you want me to send you a daily practice to anchor your focus and reset your rhythm. 1. Don't rely on motivation. Build a system that can't be broken. Imagine this. You wake up, eyes barely open, and the first battle hits you. Should I go to the gym today? Do I feel like journaling? Am I in the mood to meditate? And if the answer is no, your day slips. Your promise to yourself fades, not because you're lazy, but because you relied on a fleeting feeling to do the right thing. This is mistake number 1 that modern men make. They think motivation is the foundation of discipline. But a Stoic knows the harsh truth. Motivation comes and goes. But a system is designed to stay. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, didn't write his meditations only when he felt inspired. He wrote every morning. Quietly. Consistently. Not from emotion, but from principle. It was his ritual. It was how he kept his mind sharp in a chaotic empire. And it can be your path too. Stop asking yourself every day if you feel like it. Build a system. A non-negotiable structure. A chain of actions that doesn't need thought. When you brush your teeth, you don't need motivation. When you drive to work, you don't need a pep talk. So why should you need one to meditate, write, or train? A system lets you act without emotional friction. A system removes decision fatigue from your day. A system turns the right thing into the natural thing. If you want to be a strong man, not just in body, but in will, stop relying on how you feel. And start constructing a life that doesn't need motivation to move forward. Don't wait to feel ready. Design a lifestyle so disciplined, even motivation stands in awe. Action step for today. Choose one habit you've been avoiding. Anchor it to a specific time in your day. Write it down. Set a reminder. Post it on your mirror. No negotiation. Comment system if you want me to send you a 7-day blueprint to build unstoppable discipline, starting now. 2. Stop chasing goals. Start living from identity. If you've made it this far, you already understand one critical truth: motivation is unreliable. And if you wait for it to carry you, you'll forever live at the mercy of your moods. But here's the next level of discipline, the one that separates the man who acts from the man who merely dreams. You must stop chasing goals. You must start living from identity. Let that settle. See, most men build their systems around short-term goals. Lose 10 pounds. Read 12 books this year. Wake up at 5 a.m. for 30 days. These aren't bad. But they're weak. Why? Because they're temporary. They're rooted in external results. And when life throws a curveball, and it will, you'll fall off track, because that goal wasn't part of who you are. It was just something you wanted. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. They didn't say, "I want to be good." They said, "I am a good man, and this is how a good man lives." Epictetus didn't try to be disciplined. He lived as if discipline was embedded in his bones. He didn't need willpower to say no, he had clarity on who he was saying yes to. Your discipline must flow from your identity, not your intention. Because when you become the type of man who lives a certain way, everything else aligns. You don't try to eat clean, you eat clean because you are the kind of man who respects his body. You don't hope to wake up early, you rise early because you are the kind of man who leads his life with structure. You don't force yourself to write, you write because you are a thinker, a creator, a builder of ideas. So how do you make this shift? How do you stop setting goals and start embodying identity? Start here. Choose the man you want to become. Not what he looks like. Not what he owns. But what he lives by. His values. His code. His standards. Align your habits to that man. Ask yourself every morning, what would a disciplined man do right now? Then do that. Let repetition reinforce reality. Every time you act in alignment with your new identity, you build evidence. Evidence becomes belief. Belief becomes your baseline. And soon, you're not acting disciplined, you are disciplined. This is the Stoic way, to live not in pursuit of goals, but in full embodiment of virtue. So stop asking, how can I hit this target? Start asking, what kind of man would make this inevitable? Goals can fail. But identity, when you choose it and live by it, is unbreakable. Now it's your turn. Write down the man you choose to become. What does he stand for? What does he reject? What does his daily system look like, not for 30 days, but for life? Then commit. Because once you declare who you are, you don't negotiate with feelings anymore. You follow through, because to do otherwise would be a betrayal of your very nature. And that kind of man? He doesn't need motivation. He doesn't need applause. He just acts, because it's who he is. 3. You're not weak. You just forgot who you are. In the last step, we unlocked something powerful, the realization that discipline becomes effortless when it flows from identity. When you stop chasing goals and start living as the man you claim to be, everything changes. But here's the hard truth, even the strongest identity can fade in the fog of modern life. Because no matter how solid your system, no matter how clear your self-definition, there will be days when you forget. You forget that you're the kind of man who leads, who follows through, who keeps his promises. You forget, not because you're broken, but because the world is built to distract you from your own path. And that's where most men fall. They mistake forgetting for weakness. They stumble for a moment, then punish themselves for not being perfect. They say, maybe I'm not who I thought I was, and let guilt rot their foundation from the inside. But the Stoics saw things differently. Epictetus taught that failure in discipline is rarely about weakness, it's about forgetting. He said, remind yourself daily, what are you training for? Who are you becoming? This is why the strongest men in history weren't the ones who never stumbled, they were the ones who never stayed down. They built their environment to remind them. They surrounded themselves with symbols of who they were becoming. They carved reminders into their walls, their routines, their rituals, because they knew that when memory fades, behavior follows. So here's your next move. Stop seeing slip-ups as failure. Start seeing them as a signal, you've simply forgotten who you are. And your job isn't to feel ashamed. It's to remember faster. The faster you remember, the faster you return to alignment. Discipline isn't about never falling, it's about building a system so strong, so anchored, that even when you fall, you snap back with clarity. That's what elite discipline looks like. So what do you do now? You fortify your environment. You fill your space with reminders of your path. The quote on your wall. The journal by your bed. The timer on your phone. The friend who calls you out. You make it impossible to forget the man you are. Because the world is noisy. The algorithm is seductive. The easy way is always available. But none of that matters if you never forget your code. Here's your practice. Wake up and ask, who am I today? Then look around your space. Does it reflect that answer? If not, fix it. Right now. Because your environment either sharpens your edge or dulls your identity. And in a world trying to make you soft, you must stay sharp. This isn't about hustle. It's about honor. You don't remember to be productive, you remember to be aligned. And once you're aligned, discipline doesn't feel like discipline anymore. It feels like returning home. So don't ask, why did I fall off again? Ask, What system will remind me faster next time? This is how a Stoic builds a life, one daily reminder at a time. And this is how you never forget who you are. 4. The more decisions you make, the easier it is to break. In the last step, we talked about memory, how discipline begins to fade not because you're weak, but because you forget. And that forgetting isn't accidental. In fact, it has a very specific cause that's more common than most men realize. It's not just the distractions. It's not just the fatigue. It's not just the pressures of modern life. It's the sheer number of decisions you're forced to make every single day. You see, most men live in a constant state of mental negotiation. Every morning, they open their eyes and ask, should I work out today? Should I hit snooze? Should I scroll for a bit or get to work? Should I eat clean or just grab something quick? They think they're in control, making active choices. But what's really happening is this: they're draining their discipline by forcing it to argue with every temptation, every hour, every day. And eventually, it breaks. Because willpower is not an infinite resource. It's a battery, and it depletes with every tiny decision. Even ones you think are insignificant. This is why most high performers, from ancient Stoics to modern leaders, build systems, not choices. They remove the need to decide. Marcus Aurelius didn't wonder each morning if he should journal. He just did it, because it was embedded into his rhythm, not left to his emotions. And that's your next evolution. Discipline doesn't come from having the strength to decide every time. It comes from designing a life where the decision is already made. This is the way of the Stoic. To live with structure, not just strength. So here's what this looks like in your life. Wake up and your gym shoes are already by the door. Your journal is already open on your desk. Your calendar already blocks time for the things that define your identity. You don't ask yourself if you're going to do it. You've already decided. Days, weeks, or years ago, you made the decision once, and now you're simply executing. Because every time you stop to ask, every time you invite the possibility of maybe, you're giving your lower self a seat at the table. And here's the hard truth. If you give your emotions a vote, they will almost always vote for comfort. They will vote for the short term. They will vote against the man you are becoming. But when you strip away the decision, when the plan is set, and your role is only to show up, you remove the friction. You eliminate the loopholes. You make it easier to win, not harder. And in a world that celebrates chaos and spontaneity, the most rebellious thing you can do is build order, not from fear, but from deep alignment. This is how modern Stoics stay consistent. Not because they have superhuman willpower, but because they have fewer decisions to make. So ask yourself today, where are you still negotiating with yourself? Where are you allowing unnecessary decisions to creep in and steal your energy? Then start removing them. One by one. Automate your standards. Systemize your values. Make the decision once and never argue with yourself again. Because the less you decide, the more you do. And the more you do, the more you become. This is how you build a life so aligned that hesitation becomes irrelevant. You don't need more strength. You just need fewer choices. 5. Start smaller than you think. Win longer than you imagine. In the last step, we discovered something that rewires the foundation of how most men think about discipline, that the more decisions you make, the more likely you are to fall. Not because you lack strength, but because you're bleeding energy through endless internal debates. But once the decision is made, the question becomes, how do you begin? The answer might surprise you. You don't begin by pushing yourself to the edge. You don't begin by declaring massive goals or sprinting out of the gate. You begin by shrinking the task until it is too small to fail. Because here's the paradox of lasting discipline. The smaller you start, the longer you sustain. We live in a culture that celebrates extremes. No days off. All in. Go hard or go home. And yet, the Stoics would look at that and raise a single eyebrow. Because they understood that virtue isn't about intensity. It's about consistency. Seneca said, don't try to do everything at once. Move forward, step by step, firmly. They weren't impressed by men who burned brightly for a week. They admired those who showed up, day after day, regardless of mood, applause, or reward. That's what you must become. Not the man who runs 10 miles once, but the man who walks 1 block every day without fail. Not the man who writes 20 pages in a burst of inspiration, but the man who never lets a single day pass without writing a sentence. Not the man who meditates for an hour on Sunday, but the man who closes his eyes for 60 seconds each morning without negotiation. Because the real threat to your discipline isn't laziness, it's your own ambition. Ambition whispers, more, bigger, faster. But Stoicism replies, small, consistent, enduring. So when you start a new habit, make it laughably easy. So small that your brain can't find a reason to avoid it. 1 push-up, 1 line in the journal, 1 breath of silence. The power isn't in the act, it's in the identity it reinforces. Each small action becomes a vote for the man you've decided to be. And enough votes over time? That's transformation. Not in theory, in reality. This is how you stop chasing perfection and start living in alignment. You shrink the battlefield. You reduce resistance. You create an unbroken chain of wins so tiny, yet so consistent, they become unshakable. And slowly, without fanfare, your habits stop feeling like effort and start feeling like home. That's the secret the world doesn't teach. You don't need to start strong. You just need to start small enough to never stop. So here's your practice. Pick 1 habit you've been resisting. Then cut it in half. And again. Keep cutting until it's almost too easy to ignore. Then do it every day. And remember, the goal is not to impress anyone. The goal is to become a man who follows through. Because when you become that man, even the smallest act becomes sacred. This is how you win, not once, but for life. Not loudly, but deeply. Not in bursts, but in rhythm. Start small. Win forever. 6. Build the circle of honor. Then refuse to break it. By now, you understand what most men spend a lifetime missing. That the secret to long-term discipline is not size, speed, or intensity. It is consistency, identity, and respect for your own word. You've simplified your actions. You've started small. You've shown up. But now we arrive at the threshold where true transformation begins. Where discipline stops being a habit and starts becoming a matter of honor. Because there comes a moment, quiet, powerful, when what you're doing each day becomes more than a routine. It becomes a circle of proof. A chain of integrity. A pattern so solid it reflects not what you do, but who you are. The Stoics understood this with absolute clarity. They weren't building streaks for achievement. They were building evidence of character. And each consecutive day you act in alignment with your values, you strengthen something much deeper than muscle or memory, you strengthen your self-respect. This is the circle of honor. You started on day 1. Then day 2. Then 3. With each repetition, your identity sharpens. You go from I'm trying to be disciplined to I am a disciplined man. Not because of a trophy, but because you've shown yourself, over and over, that your word means something. And here's where it gets real. When that circle grows, it begins to protect you. It becomes harder to quit, not because of fear, but because the cost of breaking that chain is no longer external. It's internal. It would fracture something sacred, your own trust in yourself. This is what most people never build. They chase hacks. They chase hype. But they never stay long enough to become the man who keeps his word for the sake of his own soul. But you can build that. You can make every day of follow-through another brick in the foundation of a life lived with honor. And it doesn't have to be flashy. You do your reps. You sit with silence. You write the line. You live the code. And you track it, not for the dopamine of seeing the number rise, but for the quiet strength of knowing you didn't break the chain today. That's power most men will never taste. Not because it's hidden, but because it's earned, one day at a time. So here's your move. Choose your non-negotiables. Track them. Respect them. Treat each one like a vow, not a task. Not because you're trying to impress someone else, but because you refuse to betray yourself. This is what makes you unshakable. Not just habits. Not just routines. But a personal code, carved into time by repeated action. You do it until it becomes who you are. And once that happens, nothing, stress, chaos, temptation, can take it from you. Because you've built something too deep to undo. Your streak is not a number. It's a statement: I do not break promises to myself. And that kind of man? He doesn't need discipline. He is discipline. 7. You don't need punishment. You just need to return. After days, weeks, maybe even months of holding the line. Of showing up. Of doing the work. Of honoring the man you promised yourself you'd become. Inevitably, something happens. A day is missed. You slip. You break the chain. And in that moment, a voice appears. One you've heard before. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It says things like, "You broke the streak. It's over. You're not who you thought you were. You always fall apart eventually." That voice, the one soaked in shame, in disappointment, in quiet self-betrayal, can feel louder than all your previous victories combined. But here's the truth. You are not broken. You are not back at zero. You are not defined by the misstep. What matters now is not the slip itself. It's how fast you return. This is what separates the disciplined man from the discouraged one. The undisciplined man stumbles and stays down. He adds guilt to failure. He turns a one-day fall into a 10-day spiral. He sees the slip as proof that he never really changed. But the Stoic sees it differently. Marcus Aurelius, even in his private reflections, didn't write in self-loathing when he faltered. He wrote with clarity, with calm, rise again. The right thing still awaits. He didn't indulge in guilt. He didn't romanticize punishment. He understood a principle that will reshape your relationship with discipline. Shame slows return. Clarity speeds it up. You don't need to punish yourself for missing a day. You need to remember who you are and return to alignment as quickly as possible. Because the man you're becoming is not made fragile by one missed workout, one forgotten journal entry, or one kneel off track. He is forged in the act of coming back, without drama, without ego, without delay. The longer you sit in self-blame, the more you reinforce the wrong identity. The faster you return, the more you strengthen the right one. This is how you protect your momentum. Not by being perfect, but by making recovery your superpower. So here's what you do. The moment you notice the slip, stop the story. No inner narrative about weakness. No indulgent self-judgment. Just this. You missed. You're back. You move forward. The habit resumes. The system holds. The man remains. This is not denial. This is mastery. Because the deeper form of discipline isn't never falling, it's becoming the kind of man who cannot be kept down for long. The disciplined man doesn't waste time punishing himself for a stumble. He gets up. He realigns. He moves. And in that quiet return, he builds something unshakable. Resilience without drama. Integrity without interruption. Kailat Kong can su trung fat. This is the Stoic code. And if you're willing to live by it, even your lowest moments will become the foundation of your highest strength. 8. Stop worshiping your feelings. Start following your standard. You now understand that discipline doesn't die when you fall. It dies when you stay down. And staying down is almost always the result of one thing: believing your feelings matter more than your standards. This is where most men falter, not because they're weak, but because they're still chasing the illusion that action must be inspired by emotion. They wait to feel motivated before they move. They wait to feel clarity before they write. They wait to feel calm before they meditate. They wait to feel strong before they train. But here's the hard truth. If you need to feel like doing it, you'll never do it consistently. Because emotions are unpredictable. They are waves. They rise. They fall. They shift with weather, hormones, sleep, traffic, comments, likes, news headlines, and the mood of everyone around you. And if your discipline depends on how you feel, then your identity, your future, is at the mercy of forces outside your control. The Stoics rejected this entirely. They did not act because they felt good. They acted because it was right. They didn't meditate because it made them feel peaceful. They meditated because it was a tool to master themselves. Marcus Aurelius didn't rise in the early hours to write because he felt rested. He did it because the practice aligned with who he had chosen to be. So let this truth carve itself deep into your character. Discipline is not about aligning with your feelings. It's about aligning with your standards, regardless of how you feel. That means you train when you're tired. You write when you're distracted. You focus when your mind is anxious. You show up when every cell in your body wants to check out. Not because it's easy. Not because it feels good. But because that's what the man you chose to become would do. This is the turning point most men never reach. They build habits that ride the wave of good moods and fall apart when the tide turns. But you build from stone. Unmoved. Unshaken. Unwilling to let a passing storm determine the shape of your path. Because you know this, discipline built on emotion is fragile. Discipline built on standards is immortal. So here's your practice. Choose your anchor behavior, the one habit that defines your path. Then do it, not when it feels right, but when it feels wrong. Not when you're in the mood, but especially when you're not. That is when it matters most. That is when you forge your edge. Because the man who can act without needing to feel aligned is the man who is truly aligned. His emotions are acknowledged, but not obeyed. His discomfort is noticed, but not used as an excuse. His fear is present, but not in charge. This is freedom. Not freedom from effort, but freedom from being ruled by moods. This is where KY becomes sacred. Where action becomes identity. Where your life becomes a reflection not of how you feel, but of what you stand for. And that man? He doesn't ask how he feels. He already knows who he is. 9. Measure progress without poisoning it with judgment. Once you learn to act without needing to feel aligned, something profound happens. You begin to move through your days with more steadiness. More action. More follow-through. But then another voice appears. One just as destructive as doubt, though often dressed in discipline. It sounds like, was that enough? Why didn't I do more? I should be better by now. This voice doesn't question whether you showed up. It questions whether what you did was good enough to count. And suddenly, instead of standing on solid ground, you're back on the emotional roller coaster, only now, the pressure isn't coming from laziness. It's coming from perfectionism. That's why this next shift is critical. You must learn to observe your progress without poisoning it with judgment. Because the moment you turn self-reflection into self-attack, you break the foundation of everything you've built. The Stoics reflected daily. But they didn't do it to shame themselves. They did it to sharpen themselves. There is a world of difference. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, they asked, what did I do well today? What did I fall short in? What can I improve tomorrow? But they didn't attach worth to the answer. They didn't spiral into guilt. They observed, adjusted, and continued. That's your model now. Discipline without reflection becomes blind repetition. But reflection without compassion becomes self-destruction. And neither of those paths builds the life you want. So here's your practice. Every evening, take 5 minutes. Sit with yourself, not to judge, but to understand. Ask, did I live according to my values today? What promise did I keep to myself? Where did I falter, and what system will help me realign? Then write it. Don't argue with it. Don't spin a story. Just observe. Because this is what builds awareness without shame. And awareness is what gives you power. Not power over others, but power over yourself, your patterns, your habits, your direction. When you reflect without judgment, you gain clarity. When you gain clarity, you move with purpose. And when you move with purpose, progress becomes inevitable. But more than that, you stop seeing yourself as a project to be fixed, and start seeing yourself as a man being refined. Not in fear, not in comparison, but in alignment. Because true self-respect isn't built by being perfect. It's built by looking at your imperfection with honest eyes and choosing to improve anyway. The Stoic doesn't stare into the mirror to punish himself. He stares to remember who he is and who he's becoming. So tonight, when the day ends, do not ask, did I do enough to be worthy? Ask this instead. What did I do today that honored the man I am becoming? That question changes everything. And the answers will carry you further than any guilt ever could. 10. Discipline doesn't need willpower. It needs a system that works when you don't. You've come this far. You've built from identity. You've acted through fatigue. You've returned after slipping. You've reflected without judgment. But there's one last truth most men still misunderstand. A truth that, once understood, unlocks the next level of durability. Discipline does not rely on willpower. It relies on systems. And yes, you've heard the word system before. But let's be honest, most men treat it like a concept. An abstract tool. A vague strategy. Not you. Because now, you must build it as a structure that protects you when motivation fades, when feelings fluctuate, and when life hits harder than expected. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Willpower is like your phone battery. No matter how full it is in the morning, it will drain. Stress drains it. Uncertainty drains it. Small decisions drain it. Social media, arguments, even weather, drain it. And if your entire ability to stay consistent depends on how full that battery is at 7 a.m. or 4 p.m., you will break. Eventually, you will lose. Not because you're weak, but because your entire strategy was built on a resource that was never meant to last the whole day. Now look at what the Stoics did. They didn't hope for strength when life tested them. They designed for it. They built rituals, rhythms, reminders. They made the path clear and frictionless, not so that they could be lazy, but so that they didn't have to wrestle themselves at every turn. That's what you must now do. You must build a life where the right action is the default action. Wake-up routines that don't depend on your mood. Pre-decided meals that don't ask for your willpower. Time blocks that already know your priorities. A journal that waits for you like a loyal companion, not a chore. Because when your environment, your schedule, and your habits are all aligned with the man you've chosen to become, you don't need to summon strength every day. You just step into the rhythm that you designed when you were clear, calm, and committed. This is what separates the disciplined man from the hopeful one. The hopeful man wakes up each morning trying to make the right decision. The disciplined man wakes up and executes the decisions he already made. That is power. That is peace. So here's your final challenge. Audit your life. Where are you still relying on willpower? Where are you hoping you'll feel like it? Where are you negotiating with choices that should already be decided? Then systemize it. Simplify the path. Add structure where emotion used to lead. Automate your future through design, not chance. Because in the end, the man who lives by willpower is heroic for a moment. But the man who lives by systems, he's consistent. He's calm. And in the long game, he wins. So don't wait to feel strong. Build a system so strong, it moves without you. Because real discipline isn't about force. It's about flow, built by design. And that's how you end the cycle. Not by pushing harder, but by thinking smarter. This is your edge. This is your peace. This is your legacy. You don't need more willpower. You need a system that makes discipline inevitable.